Hello there. If you click this video, then you're probably gonna know basically what's going on, but I'll just explain it further. Now, today's video I'm going to be covering the basics of one of the factions in a game called Op Void, which is short for Operation Void. Now, this game is taking place in the same universe as Anomalous Activities or Project Creepbaker, if you may know those two. Now, compared to the main game, Black Squad Division members are actually weaker than the mercenaries, because in this game mode, Black Squad Division members are supposed to be taking down the mercenaries through waves. Now, to give a quick rundown on the UI, the top right has a hazard level sign. This displays the current wave level, and as it goes higher, the more respawn waves there will be for the Black Squad Division. That represents, of course, as I've mentioned, how many times they respawn before the next wave. Now, the Black Squad Division starts off very weak at first. They start as kind of like little pebbles, you could say. They have weak pistols. Well, not really weak, but they have not too strong pistols. You know, they're going to be losing most times in engagements against Mercs early on, because this game is a snowball effect kind of. You're supposed to be struggling early on as BSD, but then it gets easier for you to take down the mercenaries later on as they go. Now, with a general rundown of how the Black Squad Division runs out, and I will continue to add on to that on my separate video that I will be making soon, let's talk about what you're really here for. The mercenaries and the basics of it. Now, mercenaries. You have 6 classes. You have the Assault, Archangel, Blade Runner, Technician, Specialist, and Tower. To start off, let's talk about the Assault. Now, the Assault class gets a nice little juicy ammo box, which is going to be very good for you, because in this public testing session, there is no way to refill your guns unless you have a ammo box. Now, I know what you might say, oh, why not? Well, you got to keep in mind that this is still early into development, and there's so many plans and fixes that they have to do. Especially with one of the bugs being astral projection, which you could probably find out later on the Trello or Discord in clips, as I will send the links for those in the description. Not only that, there's only one main dev that knows how to work on the project properly. Well, not work properly, but at least has code and script and animate all that. So cut some slack. This is a really good game after all, and it's only really one person who's actually able to work most times, or will contribute a lot of the progress. I'm not saying any disrespect for other members, because they do just as much work, and they do take heavy suggestions from the community. Now, let me continue. Now, as Assault, it's almost always crucial to have one of these dudes, because there's always such a big need for ammo, especially during the later waves. But this is a little bit less needed if there is a Blade Runner and they manage to live and they don't die early on. Now, that actually brings me to my next class I mentioned, the Blade Runner. Now, the Blade Runner, unlike every other class, cannot use guns. They sacrifice guns and other stuff in returns for getting faster speeds and killing on kill with their VT7 blade. Now, this blade, obviously, if you have played other games, it is the Murasama. But in this game, there's also another variant actually, it's VT8, but basically previous players probably already know what this is, but for those who don't know, it's also known as Kizuna. Now, Blade Runner is very good in specific situations. If you know how to use the Blade Runner and you can play around its debuffs or downsides of lack of guns, then I recommend you pick this. Or you could also just pick it if you're feeling a little quirky and you want to get ahead, start killing a lot of people while also risking a lot of life. I will say it is very good in dopamine terms, but I'd say at first you might want to stick to Assault or Archangel, which actually I'll start talking about now. Now, Archangel. Archangel is a medic class. You obtain a Invil Stabilizer. This is basically a syringe gun that heals your teammates for 80 HP flat. One downside with this is though, you lack the ability to self-heal unless you have equipment, which I will move on quickly briefly later. You kind of the whole like survivability part that heals all your teammates and prevents them from dying most times, unless you forget your charges or you waste them. Now, honestly, I recommend Archangel or Assault for the, like, if you're starting out, because it's just beginner friendly and it's really nice to use. And honestly, it's just one of the best ways to get credits as well, because you do get extra credits when you heal or restock ammo for your teammates, which I will get a little bit further also later on in the video as well, which also kind of concludes Archangel. Oh, actually, wait, no, there is some more stuff. You also want to be very careful with your charges, because you only get them back periodically. So if you waste your charges early on and you have a teammate that's low, then they might have a higher chance of dying because there's no way to heal them at the moment, especially if they lack the equipment to heal themselves. Now let's talk about Specialist. The Specialist is a info gathering support class. It has the ability to place down 2 cameras at a time. Although they refresh at absurd rates, you can cycle between the 2 cameras, and what they essentially do is they will highlight all Black Squad Division members that are nearby the cameras or are in sightline or spotted. I don't know how entirely it works. I'm pretty sure it's also proximity, but basically they highlight them in a bright, well, not bright, but like a soft red, and you can see them across through walls, which is really good for getting a nice early jump, especially if you cannot find them for the match. They kind of just dox their location on it, and it's really good to have, especially on bigger maps or maps that you might not be entirely experienced at. And also overall, even if you are experienced, it's really good to get some nice info before, you know, you get jump scared by a blinker, which I will explain later. And that kind of summarizes Specialist. So Specialist is just honestly a good thing also if you don't want to pick any like advanced class, or you won't have to worry about dealing with your team as much. You kind of just provide intel, and if they die, well, they kind of die. And so you kind of just leave it at that. Although the one downside is you're not going to get ammo, of course. Now, let's talk about the Technician. Now, the Technician, you get a sentry. Now, this sentry can be destroyed, so keep that in mind. But basically, it's just a good area for denying, like any cover or such. You can place it in corners, you can place it on the middle of nowhere, actually. Just any good choke points that you think might be good against the Black Squad Division is really good. And it's honestly probably one of the more used classes, but I have not seen as much in my servers. But nonetheless, I do recommend it if you are new as well, because it's not too hard to learn how to play around. Now, let's get to Tower. Now, Tower is a beefy class. It's actually one of the more easier ones to play, I would say. But it is a bit more controversial terms because of how good it is. In fact, I put it on par with Assault and Archangel. Now, what Tower gets is an armor plate, but on top of that, they also get an extra 100 max HP. This is really good for people who are really new to or don't have the best game sense and can't really keep up with other players. Because even though you are a Merc with 300 HP compared to the normal 100, 125, and 150 later on in the game, it's still really nice to have an extra amount of beefiness to your character, because at any moment you can die. Now, let me talk more about the armor plates. Now, the box of armor plates lets you have 3 armor plates to be picked up from the box, of course. That sounds so stupid, I don't know why I worded it like that. Basically, when you use a plate for the first time, you get an additional 50 max HP, which is really good, especially if you don't want to purchase them from the shop. Which, honestly, either way, even if you don't want to purchase them from the shop, it's really good just to have as an overall healing ability. Because, in fact, not only does it give you 50 max HP, but it gives a flat 50 healing as well. I'm not sure if this is intended or not, but I think it's also getting nerfed, so I don't know entirely. This is still very unknown, and the game is still in the works, so please keep that in mind. Now, Tower, overall, I'd say it's really good, especially as a great support, and it's probably on par with Archangel just because it can both heal and give bonus HP. And not only that, but it's also permanent HP, so it's really good to have as well. It just kind of lets your team survive a lot longer, which is really good considering the fact that at some points in the rounds or the server, you can have your entire server against 2 people. Yes, that's true, actually. That's an actual thing, so do keep that in mind. And with that, kind of ends the entire class rundown. Now, personally, as I've mentioned, I would recommend playing one of the three, being either the Assault, Archangel, or the Tower, just because they're really simple to use and they're really good for your team and getting credits as well. Now, before we get any further into tactics, because I will leave that for another video, let me talk about the equipment. Now, as a mercenary, you don't only have to rely on your guns, you also have equipment. Equipment's going to be a really good thing, especially in later rounds, because most of them are really good for denying certain situations and also just overall increasing your survivability. For one example, we have the MTI stems, which is one of the items that I think is pretty much essential in every single playthrough. Because what MTI stems do is they heal for a flat amount, around 30 HP I believe, and on top of that they add on 2 HP regeneration ticks for around, I think maybe half a minute. I'm not too sure entirely, but basically on top of a small burst of healing, you also get a longer, slow regeneration of it, which is really good considering the fact that mercenaries do not have any form of healing other than the Archangel or the MTI stems. Especially if you don't have an Archangel, you always want to score at least a couple of MTI stems. Now, along with MTI stems, you want to oftentimes have faster reloads, considering that you're constantly being rushed down by BSD. One equipment that can help fix that is the invul shot. Now, the invul combat shot basically is a big overall buff to your guns. Not only does it increase your recoil control, but it also increases your reload speed massively. For example, if you were reloading a shotgun, it'd go from maybe 2 seconds to being 1 whole second, because of how fast you're reloading it. And that's really crucial because in this game, if you mess up for even a split second, that can mean the death of you. So, you keep that in mind. Next, we can move on to the frags. Frags, I think they're pretty self-explanatory. The good use of this is clearing out large groups of BSD or clearing areas that you don't want to bother checking in the first place. That, or you can also use the pressure off or on BSD members. Now, moving on, we can have the flashes. Now, flash is also self-explanatory, but in this game, rather than being just if you were looking at it, it's more so of the small AoE around it. Now, flashes in this game are absurdly good, and I recommend getting them whenever you can, because in this game, the flashes last for quite some time, and not only that, but they leave a trail against people who are flashed, which is really good at countering specific BSD classes such as the Blinker, which I can get further into later on. Now, flashes, overall, they are really good, as I can kind of just explain, but the one downside with it is that you can flash yourself, so if you are throwing it and it happens to hit a wall, just make sure that you get behind an object so you don't blind yourself. Now, let's move on to the mines. Now, mines are just, well, trip mines, and they're kind of what you think they do. They're a little mine that has a laser attached to them. If there's any player that shoots or walks into it that's not on your team, then it will explode and, you know, kind of kill them. However, do keep in mind that the mines can be shot by your own teammates and it will deal self-damage. So, if you're in the blast radius of that, do be careful and try to make sure you're on top HP. Now, how about we get into the Inge stimulant? The Inge stimulant is a quick adrenaline stim. Basically, in exchange for 5 to 6 seconds of a speed boost, at the end of it, you are slowed down for 3 seconds, around 3 seconds at least. Now, this is really good in certain situations, as if you misposition yourself or you get stuck on an object while escaping, or you're entering a gunfight, then you will be slowed down at the end of it, and you oftentimes will end up dead because of it. So do be careful whenever you are using this, as it's a big trade-off if you mess up. Now, hold on. What the fuck is this? I'm sorry. Thermal flares? What the fuck is it? This is dog shit. Okay, jokes aside, this equipment isn't really good. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't think I've seen, like, any people take this item seriously just because of how bad it is. Well, not really bad. I guess it's okay if you want to deny some areas, but either way, it's still very underwhelming compared to all the other equipments. And honestly, I just think it's not worth using. Next, we have the decoys. Now, the decoys are pretty self-explanatory, but it might actually be a little more confusing. So let me get more into the details. Now, the decoy grenades work just exactly how they do in CSGO. And if you don't know how they work in CSGO, basically, They emit sounds and other random gunshots that can catch the attention of BSD members. I personally have not seen anyone use this at the moment, and I think it would be really nice to see some people use it in its good ways, or hopefully find a way to use it in a trap. Otherwise, I would just be honest, I don't know why you really use this thing. And that kind of concludes all of the equipments. However, there is 2 other equipments that are class locked. The PMS stabilizer is obtained from the medic class. I will just add on right now, as of the current moment, this is very underwhelming and it's honestly kind of not worth using most times. If I'm going to be honest, it's okay. It heals for a good amount. It does 1000 HP. It heals 1000 HP before being gone, but honestly, for the price of it, I don't really think it's all too worth it. Especially because it's basically half the price of an actual gun. Also, because you can just heal them normally, and most times people carry an MTI. And staying in one spot is also especially a very dangerous thing for the mercs. Now, that actually leads me to bring another thing that I just realized. Your light. Playing as a mercenary, you always will have spawned in with a flashlight on. Press F to turn it off. Now, I cannot stress this enough. Never have your lights on unless you really need it to navigate around. The darkness is your best friend because the Black Squad Division members cannot see you that well in the dark. Unless they get really close or they're using a marksman weapon, it will be really hard for them to spot you unless you're illuminated by something. There are many instances where I've seen mercenaries die because their sole flaw in their gameplay is not sticking around the dark spots, which is really bad for them because the dark is quite literally how they're supposed to get the drop on the BSD. Now, the other special or class-specific locked equipment is the Riot Shield. Now, the Riot Shield is kind of self-explanatory as well. It blocks off damage, but do keep in mind that this has durability. So if you do happen to get shot at many times, then there's no way to repair it unless you rebuy it. So if you are using it, try not to overuse it. This is locked to the tower, by the way. I don't know if I said that earlier, but post-editing will probably make fun of it. Now, that kind of summarizes the equipment. Well, aside from the enemy plate, but then again, that's kind of just what tower does. Now that I've explained that, how about I get into a quick run-by of the primaries and secondaries. Now that that's covered, how about I talk about the quick overview of the shop system. As a mercenary, you are only allowed to shop for gear and equipment in between rounds. You have 50 seconds around, or a minute. 50 to a minute, okay, I don't remember exactly, but you have this time period to purchase items from the shop. And this is the only time you have it because you cannot purchase it in between waves or during them. Which is one reason why you should always be trying to conserve as much ammo and util as you can, because some equipment items have a carry limit of 4 or less, more, whatever you want to say. Which is really bad for mercs because you have to rely on your gear, not just gunplay. You could be as good as you can be, but as soon as you run out of util in bad situations, you're not going to be able to win that fight because of it. So it's almost always essential to keep some of your equipment for later waves. Primaries and secondaries, they all change how you play entirely. Now, there's many different types of primaries and secondaries. For example, there's SMGs, shotguns, snipers, battle rifles, and assault rifles. You have quite a big arsenal to choose from. However, all of them have different gimmicks or different amounts of ammo, damage, and all that stuff you have to consider, as it basically changes how you're supposed to play, and you have to play around how their gimmick is. For example, the Blackout. The Blackout is a sniper rifle that provides the player with slight night vision. This allows them to pick off enemies in the dark and allows them to step out longer distances and not worry as much with the visibility-wise. Now, I will say, Blackout is pretty good, but if you're starting out, you might want to start with an AR. For example, the Tarks. Now, the Tarks is a really good starting rifle because it has good ammo and it does really good damage with a good rate of fire. However, I do recommend that if you are going to be playing around a more aggressive playstyle, you could probably use an SMG or a shotgun. And that's kind of just what it is, playing around the situation or playing around your current build. Now, you're not always going to be in a good situation with your primary. Although you can have multiple of them, most times you're not going to always have a good situation, or you're not going to be in a good spot to use one of them, which is why having secondaries is also just as good. Now, although you could get multiple primaries, it's also always nice to have a secondary, because say for example you have two big guns and you need to purchase something to cover another thing. For example, you have a long range and a close range, but you don't have anything good for the middle. Well, you could have a secondary such as the Paragon. It's 6-round magazine, revolver slash deagle kind of thing. It's a big damage but small ammo count. This is really good for mid to long ranges, and that solves your issue of the lack of mid-range damage deal. Now, secondaries themselves actually have categories too. There is a small 1-round shotgun called the Pepper Shaker. This is good for BSD classes that tend to get up in your face, such as the Blinker, which I will further explain again, because that thing is actually one of the more important classes. Not only that, there's also things such as the Vitax, which actually is the same as the Pepper Shaker, but there's another Vitax, which is the 8-cap. Now, the 8-cap is an SMG pistol. You see where I'm going. That kind of summarizes your secondaries and primaries. Although there is one more thing I do want to mention. Don't let others tell you what gun is best and what isn't best, because it's all honestly just down to preference. If you do struggle with finding a gun that you want to use, or if you can't find a gun that you think is suitable for you, you can just ask me down in the comments and I will suggest you a gun, actually, because most guns kind of have specific playstyles that I think it's pretty easy to get used to. But that kind of summarizes the primaries and the secondaries. Now, how about I get on to the BSD? The BSD have classes as well. For them, it's randomized, so you don't get to choose as a BSD. But I'm going to briefly cover over the classes because I want to have a specific guide set up, which I'll hopefully be making soon, as I've said before. Basically, as your mercs, when you're fighting against BSD, you want to look out for specific classes. One of the classes that I want in specific that I want to talk about mainly is the Blinkers. Now, Blinkers are like the Blade Runners, except they can have a gun. Most times they'll only be having a pistol, sometimes they might not have it at all, I'm not too sure, I don't remember. I don't have enough playtime with it to know. But Blinkers, they get a machete, and rather than having the bright red light, they have no light and will only periodically flash a dark bright glare. So this makes it hard for the mercenaries to see exactly where they are, and it will let them get the drop on the mercenaries. Now, to play around this, I'd recommend placing mines around, or having some sort of area denial. Things such as the Specialist can help prevent you getting jumped by a Blinker, but then again, that's kind of just depends on how good you are at aiming, or how good they are at avoiding it. Which I actually should mention, the cameras are also breakable, so do keep that in mind. Now, another good way to counter the Blinkers is by having a good setup. If you have a team that coordinates well and you cover each other's corners, then it can prevent you guys from being jumped by a Blinker. Not only that, but also just having anything that can hinder their flank routes is really good. Now, I will say, Blinkers are going to be very scary at first because they also are fast just as well. But once you're well versed in the game, then you will be a lot easier to deal with. I actually want to mention that BSC classes, some of them you can spawn off instantly, but some of them are locked behind waiting. Now, the Assault class is every single wave. You start off with it from the very beginning. However, it does get upgrades as the wave goes on, which is actually something for all the classes. However, classes like the Blinker and the Warthog spawn near the late game. Blinkers spawn around 4 to 8, which is a mid to late game, and then the Warthogs are wave 7 to 8. Now, the Warthogs actually are riot shield holders, so think of the tower with a shield, but it's a little weaker and it has less durability. This is how you're supposed to live longer with BSD, and you're supposed to play around the support of your team, which is one of the main things needed to live as a BSD member. Now, I will say, it is pretty easy to counter the Warthogs because, although they might have a shield, it's still very fragile and breaks in a couple of shots, especially if you have high damage. Not only that, but if their shield is down, you can get damage on them. And although, despite their more beefiness or more HP, you can still easily kill them and you have no troubles most times. However, they are lethal when you have multiple of them and there's assaults behind them providing supporting fire. Most times you want to try to get rid of the Warthogs first because their cover will lead to stronger pushes, and the best way to deal with that is like throwables or equipment such as the flash, the frags, or the mines. Anything that's explosive or denies certain areas or prevents them from entering without getting damaged or killed is really good, especially because in large hordes they'll typically be running around, or they'll just be running around alone and using their shield as much as possible. Now, on top of that, you can also circle around them or try to get close the gap before they kill you, because it allows you to bypass their shield or make them let down most times due to their ego, or they will typically just stop being able to track you down and they'll kind of let your back open. Most times it's good to have someone that is good to rushing them down, or having a Blade Runner that focuses on taking them down as well. Although I will say, if you're running Blade Runner and do that, please try to be careful in the crowds, because you will die in a mere second. Now, medics. BSC also have medics, of course, but they have a weaker heal, I believe. Now, they work the exact same, and they kind of just have the whole same setup. Just weaker heal, I'm pretty sure. But also, they spawn in with shotguns. Most times, at least. Now, the medics spawn around mid-game, and then they get an upgrade later on at waves 5 to 8. And to counter them, you just want to kill them off first, or you want to make sure that you kill all their main supporting fires and then take them out from the long range. Personally, I'd say take them out from the long range before you take out everything else, because if you're saving them for last, then they have a higher chance of taking you down because they have a source of healing for their team. So keeping them off first is going to be really good for your team, because it prevents Warthogs from being more tanky and refreshed. Now, the Assault class, well, it's kind of just an Assault class. It's just going against a weaker version of you could say, or imagine. Especially in the earlier waves when they only spawn in with pistols. Of course, they get upgrades during the mid-game, which is waves 3 to 4 and then 5 to 8. And honestly, you just want to be making sure that you're being very careful when it comes to gunplay. Now, you could beat them completely in gunplay and just like demolish them without getting hit much, but it's almost always going to be a nice thing just to have some sort of way to deal with them. And for that, it's kind of just making sure that you're staying out of their sightlines, because unlike every other class, they don't really have too much of a gimmick. They get an ammo box and that's about it. And honestly, that's all you really need. If you have especially someone who can pick them off with like a sniper rifle or battle rifle, then it's really good. Or you can also pressure them with the entire group of your team, because although they have stronger firepower than most other classes, they still get killed off pretty strongly by a mere mix of teamwork. And that kind of summarizes how Mercs are supposed to play. If you want more help or you want some more info about mercenaries, you can definitely check out the Trello and Discord and ask for help, which I will be linking down in the description below. And if you have any general questions that I hopefully have the answer to, then please do comment them, because I actually love this game a lot. And it's still very community driven, like support based, so if you do have some complaints, you can also just tell the server. Not only that, but they will oftentimes have some sort of answer, or it might already exist in fact. So yeah, once again, I'll leave them down there, and I will answer any questions if there are any. Keep in mind again, this is the first public testing branch, I'm pretty sure, or well, session, so try not to be too harsh. Again, it's one person who's making most of the code, so yeah. If you do like this, be sure to leave a like and tell me why and stuff, because I do want to make more good videos on this, and hopefully I can actually make a better guide for the Black Squad Division side soon. All in all, thank you for watching, and I hope this guide helped you a lot. Until then, I hope you enjoyed playing the playtest, if you give it a try.